If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asher, and this is
Ivy.
So, I'll be spending the next 3 weekends in the beautiful mountains of West Virginia. I'm excited. I'm excited to get back to work on the documentary. I think that it, obviously it needs to happen. I'm not very hopeful for what I'm gonna find, but I haven't found the Mothman yet. But maybe he'll be there this time. So I tried to call him and he didn't answer my call. So I don't know. I told him, I left him a voicemail. I said I'm gonna be there. So hopefully he gets the message. But yeah, I'm gonna go down there and mostly do I don't know. I guess most of it's just gonna be a Blair Witch Project style thing at this point. Just walking around the woods, seeing if I find anything, see anything. Maybe I'll get new information. I'm probably going to try to vet the locals and things like that. It's kind of a odd situation because, especially with the coronavirus going on, because it's how do you, it's already kind of hard to convince people to want to freely get on camera and talk about something as bizarre as the fucking Mothman. It's even harder when you have the coronavirus involved. So, but you can social distance, yeah.
People will be wearing masks, so their identity will be concealed.
Well, we could do we're going to do interviews outside with people, and, it'll be nice. I'll be able to have, I've got 2 cameras now, so I'll have that, and I'll have people with me, so I'll have everybody basically taking different shots of different things, so, but it'll be fun. The fun part about it is usually I try to take someone new, and, every time they get to go, I kind of get to play, because I've been so many times, I get to play, tour guide, and I'm and this is where the bridge collapsed, and then you just turn around, and right there's the Mothman Museum, and right beside the statue, and that's Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So, it'll be fun. I want to try to go to the, Braxton County, West Virginia, but girl, it's 5 hours away from here. So it's on one of these weekends, I'm gonna try to do an overnight there, and one of our friends, she's got a tent and stuff. So what we're thinking about doing is, what I'm thinking about doing is, we'll sleep out that night in the TNT area, and then camping, and then the next day we'll get up and go to Braxton County. But it's it's so hot right now. It's been so gross, and it's the worst time to do that.
Get you one of those handheld fans on Amazon.
Right. I need a whole ass air conditioning unit. Do they sell those on Amazon? Portable air conditioner? Probably. Because it's going to be fucking disgusting. So, I gotta do it. It's just part of the job. I guess I don't have to. I could probably get a room somewhere, but fuck it. So
that's money.
Yeah, but it's pretty cheap. Nobody wants to fucking stay in West Virginia, so it's it's pretty cheap down there. It's not that bad. I could stay at the Low. The Low Hotel is supposedly haunted. I've heard stories of it and whatever, and I've always wanted to stay. So I don't know. Maybe that's what I'll do instead. But anyway, that's what I've got going on, and so right now I'm just trying to get some consolidate my scripts and stuff, and that way I could do some some actual filming of me talking with things in the background, I guess. Some cinematic shots. I don't know, guys. I'm a shitty filmmaker, but but I've got some great ideas, so stay tuned. But anyway, so this week I think it's a topic that I've kind of wanted to cover for a while. It's something that is in the back of my mind a lot for whatever reason. But I figured this week we'd kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about the ethics of science, or rather the unethics of science. so, science is it's a really slippery slope, because in order for us to learn new things, we have to do some really shady shit to get there. And not everybody agrees. Not everybody has the same, thought process on what's ethical and what's not. And then you have the variance between different countries and things like that, different fields of study. But one thing that recently kind of piqued my interest in it was I was actually talking about organ transplantation. It was really a very hot topic. Like, people didn't know if they were comfortable with the idea of transplanting organs from person to person. And it was a very slow progression. And so it's like, but then it's like, once we found out that we could do that, we're like, well, shit, what else can we take off of somebody else and put into somebody?
Right.
What all can we do here? And so it kind of got this weird, there was like a weird interest in like head transplant studies. And so it was bizarre. So it's like, you take a paraplegic, somebody that is paralyzed from the neck down, and if we could get, a seemingly decent body for them, maybe a cadaver or something, and put their head on that body, then maybe they could walk again. Maybe we could fix that issue. And it started with these like weird experiments, because they weren't just like doing the head transplant thing. They were also, at that point, they were questioning then your consciousness. Like, where is your consciousness located then? And so, it started off with these weird scientists that were taking dogs, and like the one scientist just completely detached the head of a dog and was like seeing if he could just keep the head alive, and he could, and he did. And it responded to stimuli. So it's just the dog's head hooked up to a bunch of machines. Actually, I think there's video and stuff of it. Actually, all these I believe there's video of. They did that. So like, well, what happens if we take that dog head and we put it onto the body of another dog? So they did that. And so they created a two-headed dog, and gosh, the one scientist, he did it over and over again. He did it like 30 times on 30, like, or something. Maybe not 30. I don't remember exactly, but he did it a couple of times. And, usually he would take a puppy's head and put it onto an adult body. I don't know why. I don't know if it had better chances of survival. I don't know if it was because of size. But he would take, the puppy's head, put it on another dog's body, so he'd make a two-headed dog, basically, and both heads would respond to stimuli. The one lived for, like, almost a month. It lived for a long time like that. And, he would note how, like, he'd usually place the second head kind of behind the one dog's head, kind of on its neck. And, he noted how, like, the puppy head would still want to be playful and would, like, bite at the ear of, like, the bigger dog, and the bigger dog would be annoyed. And, but really very kind of sad, actually. But then they upped this. They upped the ante on it. And they took and these were all different scientists, by the way, doing similar experiments for the sake of science. But they took a monkey. There's two monkeys, and they wanted to, take the heads off and switch bodies, switch heads. And they did, and they successfully did, and it was fine. The monkey responded. It was actually very upset. It was very distressed, and I don't know, that's kind of unnerving to think about, because it's like, again, one question that came into play was, what about the consciousness? What's going to happen? How are you going to feel when you wake up and you're on somebody else's body?
Well, not only that, but, a monkey can't necessarily consent. So
right.
If it just, like, takes your head off, puts it on another monkey, it's just like, hey, what the fuck?
I didn't ask for this. Yeah, and so it was, but the monkey was very upset, and it lived. It did die due to, most of these died due to complications during surgery. Or, from surgery, but not complications from surgery, if that makes sense. Like, they'd die of, like, infection or
it wasn't
just
like
basic.
From the outcome
right.
of the surgery. It was from the surgery itself.
Right, exactly. And so, they were doing that. And this was, like, primarily, like, the 40s, 50s, 60s. And, like, during that time, like the reason why it was brought up to me was because one of the horror movies that I'm hosting is The Brain That Wouldn't Die. And so, you know, I was doing a bunch of research and stuff, writing up my scripts and things like that, and it was like kind of a big topic at the time because it's about this, you know, this husband and the two fiancés get into a car accident, and the lady's decapitated. He takes her head and takes it to a lab, keeps it alive, and then now he's got to find her a body. So he's like out trying to find somebody to kill to like bring her a body, and but it like really called into question the ethics of it because his fiance had no idea, because he was like kind of secretly a mad scientist, and she had no idea, and she was extremely disgusted, and she would, you know, she'd wake up and she'd like beg his assistant to like kill her. She's like, you know, this is wrong. And so it was kind of funny how, you know, prevalent it really was in like pop culture then, because, you know, it was something that was realistic, or at least seemed realistic at the time. Now, to date, we have not successfully transplanted a human head. We've not done that. And we've had people that have volunteered. I think we had one volunteer recently, and he backed out. But it has to be approved by so many people. It has to be funded, and the surgery itself is like millions and millions of dollars. Like, it's crazy expensive. And so, you know, will we ever do it? We probably will. But I feel like what we can do scientifically is getting more and more restricted as we grow as a species, which is kind of weird because we are becoming more and more advanced. You know, at this point, it would seem more plausible to create like a robot body and put the head on it instead of like trying to take, you know, another person's body and using it, which I think is silly. I mean, you have the option to donate your body to science when you die, so it's like, you know, why not use cadaver bodies to do those types of things? But again, people think that that's kind of playing God. And, you know, we see that in cloning a lot. You know, people think that cloning is unethical. And cloning's a weird, I mean, it is a strange thing. I remember did you see the mummified baby woolly mammoth a couple years ago?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they found one, and it was pretty well preserved. And preserved enough to where they can probably clone it. But they haven't because people don't think you should. They're like, oh, well, it's extinct for a reason. Just like, well, Jurassic Park, you know.
Right.
Everybody's like, do you want another Jurassic Park? Because that's how you get Jurassic Park. And it's like,
but it's a woolly mammoth. And a fucking T-Rex.
Right. And it's like, but then again, it's like, if we did clone these animals, it could come in handy because we could repopulate, you know, extinct species or endangered species before they become endangered. But if we clone them, they wouldn't have a choice because we would raise them. They wouldn't have a choice but to be captive their whole life. And so, is that ethical? I mean, then for what reason are we...
I mean, not necessarily. Like, if we do it enough, like, yeah, we're going to have to, like, the first time it's successfully done, like, from, you know, it lives a full, healthy life,
yeah,
we'll want to monitor it and study it. But, you know, at a certain point, if it continues to be successful, there wouldn't really be a reason why we couldn't. Just have them in the wild.
We can clone it. You know, we're capable. We have Dolly. Have you seen Dolly?
Is that the dog?
No, she's a sheep or a lamb or some shit. She's
Yeah,
like a goat or something.
It's not like self-sustaining though.
What do you mean?
It's not like other sheep.
Why?
Because it's not stable.
I don't think Dolly had any issues. I don't know for sure. I don't think she had any issues. She might have been sterile. I don't think she could reproduce, and so I think that was like one of the big issues that they had. But other than that, it was pretty successful. I believe she lived a full life, and
I didn't think she did. Maybe she did. I don't know.
I thought she did. She was. I mean, we can successfully clone. It's just that people don't want us to. People are upset that we want to clone, and they don't want us to. We were talking about cloning the other day, and I was trying to explain. So I'm hanging out with Shane and Steve. That's like, those sound like fake names. I'm hanging out with Shane and Steve, and we were talking. Actually, we were kind of talking about nature versus nurture, and we were talking about the value of a human life compared to the value of like products or whatever. And we were explaining, like, say you took Steve, okay, and you cloned him, and, you know, you made another Steve. Say you made 5 Steves. they are not ever going to be the same Steve. Like, they're not going to grow up to be the same Steve because of your experiences and everything that goes along with it. So, like, you can clone me, but I'm not going to be the same person because my upbringing would be totally different. And it's like,
well, I think that it kind of depends on the process, because it's not like you just step into a machine, it scans you, and poof, on the other side there's another you.
Right.
It's probably more along the lines of, you know,
you start
like
off
in vitro.
It is, yeah. You start off as like a baby, and you know it's from birth. Usually they'll like create. I don't know how exactly, but they'll like recreate your DNA and put it into a surrogate, and then.
Well, did you know that women are actually able to impregnate themselves, like, through science, not just in general?
What do you mean? How?
I think there's something within the bone. There's a specific name for it, but basically they can impregnate themselves. They can continue to repopulate. Yeah, it came about because some, like, feminist person was just like, you know, who needs men? Like, and then somebody commented, like, you know, how else are you going to populate the world? And they, like, posted this, like, scientific study. Like, we don't need you. It was pretty funny.
That's pretty funny. I'll have to look into that and see. I mean, I'm sure the science isn't totally there yet because, I mean, I'm sure we'd know about it. So there are probably still some kinks to work out.
Right.
But we're getting there.
Right, girl. We start with prosthetic limbs, and now we got, like,
maybe I'll stick
robotic
around a little
arms
longer.
and shit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. No, I didn't realize that was a possibility. You know, but I've looked into it. Not enough. You know, every year they're like, we're going to clone dinosaurs again. And then it doesn't, you know, we never end up cloning dinosaurs because everybody thinks it's a bad idea because Jurassic Park.
I mean, just do the nice ones, like the long necks.
And make a Jurassic Park, and I'll go, and I'll pet all the dinosaurs.
Right, keep the raptors and the T-Rex in the ground.
I mean, I think the question is, like, whether or not we should do it, and to, like, why would we do that? Just so we could see them? That would be selfish. And then it's like, then what? Then it throws off our ecosystem, because they're not supposed to be here anymore. However, they really are supposed to be here. Some of the species are still supposed to be here. It's just that, you know, humans have killed them off. So it's like, do we just clone those, or do we just clone everything just to see how it works? I mean, I think we could. And I think that it would be interesting. I don't think that we should, you know, make a whole herd of woolly mammoths, but certainly if we just clone the one, you know, just to see how it lives.
Yeah, because it's probably different from species to species.
Right. Just so we could know definitively what it looks like, or fucking clone a dinosaur, so that way we could know definitively, you know, what they look like, because we don't even know that, you know.
Girl, then there'd be all kind of conspiracies. Like, dinosaurs never existed, and science just made these dinosaurs in a lab. Because there are people that believe dinosaurs didn't exist.
Yeah, and that's really, really, really dumb. Like, what do they think the bones came from? Like, what do they think those are?
Right. Like, of all the people on this earth, I'm pretty sure scientists have had the strongest backbone in not lying about information.
I mean, right, that would kind of defeat the whole purpose of, like, being a scientist.
Right.
You know?
Like, medical professionals, yeah, they kind of, I can see them bending the lines, you know, like, as far as, like, autopsies go, like, you know, trying to, like, swing it in a certain favor.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like I said, I don't think scientists have much stake in whether or not. However, they do some very unethical shit for the sake of science. So they do get lost. So, I mean, untrustworthy, I wouldn't say untrustworthy. But I would say that I don't think they lie about things.
Right, because they have to basically get their standing from the validity of their points. And another scientist can argue.
You know, and then they do fucked up shit. And I think some of them do end up kind of late. You know, when they do this fucked up shit, they kind of reevaluate it later, like, what's that worth it? Yeah, I mean, they have to. You know, some of them have to. And, you know, when we start talking about, you know, things that are ethical and unethical, well, you know, human experimentation gets us the furthest. we will get the best results if we can experiment on humans, because we can't rely on rats, and even that is not ethical, really.
Right?
I mean, is it? No, it's not really. So I mean, what's the difference? Why shouldn't we start? I think we should experiment on like prisoners, but then of course I'll get some backlash for saying that. But I mean, people that are really fucked up. I think we should have a.
I mean, I think if...
Stop sentencing people to death and sentence them to science.
I think if people are willing to sign up for it and they give consent, then there's absolutely no reason as to why we can't do those things other than the argument of religion or personal beliefs.
Well, the best scientific studies that we have on people happened right before and during and right after World War II. Everybody knows about the Germans and all of their, human experiments. But we had, Mengele, who, he liked studying twins. His thing was twins. But these people didn't do it in any type of humane way whatsoever. But then again, they found out more shit than they ever found out before. He'd take these twins and do all kinds of fucked up shit. He'd inject color into their eyeballs just to see if the color was different on them. He would try to sew them together to create a conjoined twin. Why? Just because you can? Probably. I guess probably. If you could. If you had a whole camp of people and you're told that you can do whatever you want to these people, then I guess, yeah, you would. But, I mean, that takes some pretty fucked up people to do that. Those people, I don't think they lose any sleep, as sad as that is, but because, I mean, they're already doing things that are that fucked up. And then, the Japanese really hit it hard. Everybody talks about the Nazis and the Nazi experiments. Nobody talks about the Japanese and how they fucked over the Chinese. The Chinese people are still dealing with issues that were brought on by the Japanese army. And they did awful things to these people. And it's and I understand that, Auschwitz wasn't good, but the thing about the Japanese Unit 731 and their logs is that they did a lot more. And they did so much. They did all this shit. They were, for some reason, frostbite and freezing temperatures was a big one. So they would dip these people in water and make them stand outside in the winter times and until they basically froze to death, and then they would experiment on the frozen limbs and things like that. They would, vivisections were always big, so they'd inject you with different drugs and then cut you wide open while you're still alive and study what was going on in your body whenever they put that drug in your body. They would force pregnancies, they would force the spread of venereal diseases because they wanted to cure them, and they did. I mean, as fucked up as that is, they made some huge breakthroughs in science, and it was not, but it wasn't a pretty sight to do it. And when they did all this, they became so advanced because they were able to just cut out the middleman and work directly on the source. And so, they made huge medical advances. Well, a big issue that seemed to happen was, people found out that the Japanese were doing this. And so the Japanese are very noble people. So they burnt that bitch to the ground. They burnt the facility to the ground. And a lot of the studies were lost. But we told them that if they gave us the information that they had learned, and if they started working for us, their scientists and shit started working for us, we would absolve them of all crime. And that's what we did. And that is probably one of the biggest conspiracy theories that's happened in our entire country. And nobody knows about it because we just were oh, it never happened. Just swept it under the rug. And then eventually people started coming out, survivors started coming out and explaining what had happened. And, the people that did live. And then some soldiers came out and started, telling what happened. And, slowly over time, we learned that, this was a thing that was going on. I mean, God, it was really, they would infect people they would just, create a wound just to infect it with gangrene, or they'd smear feces in it just to see what happened, and then try to treat it, and then but of course they would do the vivisection then after they're infected and see how that infection spread. I mean, it was just, again, they had all these people locked in cages like fucking animals, and they were given the go-ahead to do whatever they wanted to them. And then, at the end of the day, because they burnt most of the evidence, all of it was in vain. And it's like, why? You know, at that point, you just tortured people for fun. You know, there's nothing scientific about it. But, you know, rumor has it that that some of the stuff that they had studied is even more advanced than we have in some of our sciences today, because we were able to experiment directly on people. And
without any kind of regard, just
just whatever you wanted to do, just whatever. Well, like I said, injecting fucking color into the eyeballs of twins, that's pretty bizarre. Why? What's the point of that? What are you going to learn? You know, nothing. And so that was just, you know, actually some of the times you had like the good twin and then you had like the not good twin. So like what Migla did was he had he had a set of twins, and he would use one to experiment on, and then he would keep the other one as like a control. And then, so then the one twin would have to watch their twin go through all this torture, and then, you know, that was it.
What, to like see if like anything happened in
usually when
twin that wasn't experimented on?
No, when you do like a scientific experiment, you have a control. It's a neutral. You don't do anything to it. Like, so you compare it. So he could compare like vitals between the two twins and like assume that they would be the same because they're twins. You know, and so he would be like, oh, this is the difference. This is what caused this today, I guess. But then, like, when that twin would die, when the experimental one would die, they would then experiment on the other one or just kill it, or, you know, whatever. There was like a case of like a 11, 12-year-old boy that they tied to a chair, and they had a hammer over his head, like hanging over his head, and every so often it would fall down and hit his head. And it was like this for a very long time. Then he actually ended up going nuts because of it. Wasn't enough to kill him. Well, I think eventually it did, but it was a very slow process because it was a constant, you know, banging of the hammer. So, you know, but why? You know? I mean, just for the sake of torturing somebody? I mean, that's what that seems like to me. So, I mean... Well,
weren't the Japanese, like, they have, like, some of the most, like, horrendous, like, torturing techniques.
Oh, yeah. So... Absolutely. They're just fucked up people.
Probably was just, like, an extension of that, or what, you know, kind of developed different torture techniques and they from that point on.
I mean, they were into a bunch of stuff, but they were also really into, like, biological warfare. So there's like cities in China still that struggle from World War II times where they were dropping fleas and infected with fucking malaria, you know, and shit. And so it's, you know, that's pretty scary. That's pretty heartless. I mean, they would subject the Chinese to just different random, and our government's done that. Didn't they do like in the 80s, they infected a bunch of black people with syphilis, didn't they? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and, you know, against their will, and they, you know, conducted their own little human experimentation. So, I mean, it's kind of scary because it's like, how do you know when they're doing it? You don't.
Right. Well, there's a same kind of idea with HIV and AIDS, too, that the government was infecting people. I mean, it might not necessarily be the same. It might not necessarily be to find a cure or to try to treat it, but... rather to eliminate.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, it's all a weird thing. And I mean, we do have like clinical trials. And so you can sign up for clinical trials and, you know, be an experiment, and it might not go well. It's weird. Me and my mom were talking about like the coronavirus vaccine, and she was asking me, well, are you going to get the vaccine when it comes out? I won't go too deep into it, but I told her, probably not when it comes out. It just depends. I'm going to educate myself first. But then she asked, would you sign up for one of the clinical trials now and do it? And I no, I wouldn't. But, you know, it is kind of a slippery slope because my mom has a cat who, she's got some type of heart issue. And, you know, this cat was dying, and the vet suggested they put her down. She decided to take her home because she was going to die and let her die at home. And she got a call that next morning from Ohio State University. They were conducting a study. They had this medication, and they wanted to know if she was interested. And she was like, well, yeah, of course. So they got the cat on this medication immediately. And, I mean, gosh, that was like 10 years ago. And the cat's still, I mean, she's still around. And so, I mean, obviously the medication made a difference. You know, my mom had a hand in making that difference for other people's cats. You know what I mean? So it's like, it worked out that time.
But making that decision for somebody else or another, like an animal, is completely different than making that decision for yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, like, yeah, you could potentially see great things and, you know, whatever, but, you know, it would be, I wouldn't mind doing, like, a clinical trial if, like, say, it's already been done and it has, like, a 90% success rate.
Yeah, true.
That, like, I could be okay with. But, like, the first round, I'd be like, I don't know about it.
Yeah, like, I've never, I don't know if I would want to do a clinical trial. I'm just not ballsy enough. I understand it's for the greater good and they need people to do it, but I don't think they pay enough. I mean, they'll pay you some good money.
I mean, and that kind of depends on what it's actually for, too. Like, with the coronavirus specifically, no thanks. But if it was, like, something for, like, sleep, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it really does depend.
But even then, I guess you could just, like, they give you this medication, and it's a sleep medication, but they put you in a coma. It's like, oh, well, we didn't want that kind of sleep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that I would be up for it. I guess it would just depend on the study and what, I mean, I guess you're right, what it was. Something like the coronavirus. I mean, probably, because I, you know, have an understanding of vaccines, and, you know, I know that the only thing that they really change as far as the ingredients goes is the protein in the vaccine. Everything else is basically the same makeup, and it's like I've been getting vaccinated my entire life for other things, so why wouldn't I get it for this? Usually vaccine injury only happens when you have an adverse reaction to one of the ingredients, and it's going to happen at an early age, so it's like, you know, it doesn't seem like a high risk to do. But I don't know. I guess I feel uncomfortable with the idea of being a guinea pig. So it's like, we're not going to have volunteers for that kind of stuff, you know. Who the fuck's going to be like, yes, you can sew me together with my twin and make a conjoined twin? I don't know. My weird ass probably would.
I don't know.
Do you think you could put me back together after like a year? I'd probably do something weird like that. I mean, that's, you know, we went to, I went to a restaurant today, and it was weird, but I went out, and, my date, he was texting me before, he got there before I did, he was texting me before I got there, and I had already left for the day, and I'm already dressed, and, you know, I know it's a podcast, so nobody else can see, but I'm wearing my necklace with my rat fetus inside of it, and so I leave, and he's telling me that he ended up picking the wrong table. He picked a table that's by there's like a birthday party or something happening, which is just ridiculous to do in the days of coronavirus. Why not just fucking go to your house? Anyway, but he was talking about several people were wearing their MAGA hats. He said they prayed before they ate. And so of course I show up, and I just want to make a big deal about everything, and so I showed up, and I was like, oh man, I've had such a long day of worshiping Satan. And he asked about my necklace. He's like, what is that? Because it's pretty big, and I'm just rat fetus.
Right, just to turn your head just enough and say it just loud enough that they can hear it.
But they didn't, of course, they never said anything. But, so I just remembered that happened today. It was pretty hilarious. But, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think that we should definitely, experiment on people. I think we should be open to the idea of experimenting on people, but not experimenting on people against their will. Because it does make sense to do that. I mean, again, we're gonna get the best results from other people, and of course, I'm not talking about the bad stuff, but it would be a lot better, and it'd be kind of nice to be able to trust that your government's not gonna fucking flea bomb you with malaria fleas. So.
Right. Rather do it on willing participants
right.
than against my fucking will.
Like, let the city vote on it first. Like, will we have malaria fleas? Yes or no? Put it on the ballot. There was this other experiment, and it's not nearly as nefarious, but it's very interesting. And it did call ethics into play. And they have a movie, and the movie's actually really good compared to the experiment itself. But it's called the Stanford Prison Experiment. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
So this psychology teacher decided to do an assignment. It was all voluntary, okay? So kids could sign up for this assignment that he did, and what they did was they made a makeshift prison at Stanford University, and everybody would sign up, and then they all got a role. Not all of them got a role, but, well, I mean, they all got a role, but it wasn't equal. So some were prisoners, and some were prison guards. And they went and lived as if they were prisoners. And the experiment ended early because pretty quickly the prison guards kind of got, power hungry. And they started treating the quote-unquote prisoners like shit. And the prisoners were having a hard time differentiating fantasy from reality. And they started going crazy and started thinking that they were actual prisoners. But they did it like real prison. They have visitation time.
Sounds like a guilty conscience to me. What did you do?
Oh, right. Like, I'm getting what I deserve. Yes, you are. But it started to get out of hand, and but they had like visitation time with family members, and they had like a parole board where you could try to like leave early, and these people like wanted to leave, and they'd be like, well, you could just leave. I think some people did end up leaving the experiment, but it was hard because they were still very much in their role when it was happening, and it was just very bizarre. And then but again, the experiment was cut short. It was deemed unethical. Because they feel like it could have caused some type of lingering, mental health issues going forward, some type of trauma.
Well, there's a lot of universities that get backlash because I forget what they're called, but basically they have these sections of land where they just lay out bodies and they decompose.
Oh, yeah. Body farms.
Yeah. And so, like, there's so much like backlash behind it, but it's like, that can help us in so many ways. Like, as far as like if somebody's murdered and somebody tries to hide the body, you're gonna know like how long that person's been dead. Whatever. You can find out all kinds of information from being able to study something like that. But there's so many people that are like up in arms about it, and it's like, are you upset because it's happening, or are you upset because of your personal beliefs?
Did you take anatomy and physiology in high school?
No.
Oh my gosh, it was the best class. It was the best. The first day there, he's like, the teacher's kind of explaining. I can't remember his name, but he's kind of like explaining the situation and how it is, and like one of the first things he brings out is like this, like vivisected like human arm. And it's got like, it's basically a human arm with no skin, pretty much. And, he passes it around the classroom, and it was just amazing. He's, pulling out other stuff, brains and eyeballs and all kinds of shit. And he's like, here, look at this. And I thought it was really cool. But no, I mean, that is another ethical thing is that like, you need cadavers. You need cadavers to study with. Like, you don't want to, I guess nowadays we can make them. But as far as like decomposition goes, of the human body, it's like, well, it's going to be different. I mean, but for the most part, I guess I don't see why we still need that anymore. Granted, I haven't looked into it for a while.
Well, as far as I know, they do like different things with the bodies. Like they'll like some will be exposed to summer, some will be first exposed to the fall.
As an example.
But then they also do like
put different chemicals on them.
Yeah, like bleach and lime, whatever else.
See how it affects them. Yeah.
I mean, when you donate your body to science, like I think if you like donate your organs, that you can basically end up like one of those people. Like if they can't use your organs, I'm not sure. It might have changed, but it used to be that way, and I don't know if it was called something else, but it might have changed to organ donor.
Yeah, there's a difference between donating your body to science and being an organ donor. I thought, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. There was some weird, like, I read, it was a long time that I read about it, though. It was like, I don't know, like 10 years ago.
I can't wait till I'm old and I can just be like, just take me out to the farm already.
Right.
Just throw my body in the field.
But there are people that, like, say can't afford, like, funeral expenses. Like, they'll actually donate the bodies to different universities, and then when they're done with the bodies, you know, they'll provide the services and everything for it. But, you know, I don't know if that's...
Depending on what it is. There used to be, like, motivation to actually, for people to kill people, for people to be serial killers, because they would, you could sell cadavers to, like, universities and stuff, and they really wouldn't question where they came from, and that's kind of weird. You can't really do that shit now, but what's his name did it? H.H. Holmes did it. He was a big killer. You know, he killed a lot of people. And, but some people did it, you know, just for the money, just because they'd make that money off of the body. It was really, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure how they got away with it for so long. I mean, but
and you know, there's probably some dumbass out there that's like, oh, I'll just dump this body at the body farm, like as if the bodies aren't identified with.
Right, nowadays, right. I wonder how many, though, have gone unnoticed. I mean, they don't go out there and check the toe tags every day, do they?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's like some kind of identity system, like, you know, I forget like what it's called, but like the item that's being experimented, there's a term for it. Oh. Like whatever.
Exhibit?
Like, exhibit, yeah. Exhibit A, Exhibit B.
Yeah.
You know, if you just throw a body out there, like...
Exhibit Anthony. Exhibit Whitney. Yeah. That's really rude and disrespectful.
Exhibit dead ass.
Right, dead ass. That's the way they died. It's like Exhibit died on the toilet. That's wow. Autoerotic asphyxiation. I can't say it. Yeah. I mean, that's probably how they live. I mean, you gotta make your job fun, you know.
Right.
I think that's okay. I don't see an issue doing that. I don't give a fuck what happens. We kind of talked about this, but I don't care what happens to me when I die. Like, I'm not using my body anymore. Why not fucking donate your body? I don't see why you wouldn't. I don't see why you wouldn't at least put your body to some type of use instead of just throwing it in a hole somewhere that will never decompose because we've thrown you in this fucking casket that doesn't decompose. And like...
Yeah, for nobody to visit you in 10 years.
Right. After so long, that's it, you know. So, I mean, I'd do it. I'd be down. You know, my body, it's changing the world while I'm alive, and I'll change the world with it when I die. I'll do both. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's an issue at all to experiment on cadavers. It shouldn't be. Remember the bodies exhibit going around? And they don't do that anymore, which is weird. I think they should, but well, people didn't like that either. People were really upset about that, and it's, you know, people just get upset about some weird things, and
well, there's so much that just gets in the way. Like,
yeah, there is.
You know, if you can't see it from a perspective that isn't a religious or personal perspective, you're looking at it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Period. Point blank.
Exactly.
Like, it's fine if you don't want certain things done to you or your family members if they feel the same, but if somebody decides to volunteer their body for science, then there should be no issue with it, because your religious view should not affect that of others.
Right.
Like, their rights are the same as yours. Like, you have your rights to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And people that have the same like views as you, but to sit there
can't control others, yeah.
Right, to sit there and try and, you know, change the way things are done just based around you for the whole, like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And it never has been fair. That's why we have separation of, you know, church and state. Like,
right.
But even still, like, you know, like being sworn in on a Bible, or whatever you swear in on. Like I feel like that is kind of redundant. It's like we're supposed to have this separation of church and state, yet
that's a very
inviting in religion.
Yeah, that's a very outdated practice. Our money's outdated with "In God We Trust" all over it.
Right.
I mean,
it wasn't always that way either.
So we changed it. Well, it's time to change it again. It's been a while. Put me on the $1 bill. Put me on the $2 bill.
Yeah, me too.
So
Queer's the $2 bill.
So I can be a queer.
I just think that, we need to be open with science specifically.
We can't learn anything if we're not.
Right, and science isn't a religion.
No.
It's a practice. It's
a
matter of fact.
It's a matter of fact.
So, what is there to argue?
Girl, you'd be surprised. Have you heard people's opinions on the coronavirus?
Yeah, I know, right?
It is very sad. I don't get the logic. I absolutely do not understand where these people are coming from, or people like that in general, just with other topics. I don't get it. And I probably never will, because I approach things with a very scientific view. And it's just like, again, if we close ourselves off to the possibilities because it's just not right, then what? Then we're not going to get anywhere. And so, and I understand. Like I said, I've explained some of these horrific human experiments. Like, no, we shouldn't do that shit to people. Of course, I'm like, yes, we should do that to rapists and child molesters and things like that. But, then again, the fact of the matter is that people are wrongfully convicted all the time. So then it's like,
yeah, actually, I was watching America's Got Talent, and there was a guy that was on there. He was in jail for 37 years. Well, prison, let me say that. But he was actually freed because of DNA evidence. Yeah. So,
right, and if we would have taken him and given him a conjoined twin,
right,
that would have been fucked up.
Well, that's just goes to show, what science can be used for.
Yeah. That's
just
true. Yeah, that's true.
That's a simple thing that's kind of been going on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But
and I'm sure DNA testing has had its called a question of ethics. People get upset about weird stuff, and so I'm sure there were some people that were, there's people now, they're like, you're not going to get my DNA, and it's like, okay.
Right. Well, and then there's the whole thing of, storing somebody's DNA information. It's like, yeah, but you want to argue about your information being stored, yet you'll rejoice when somebody is convicted on DNA evidence.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, if you're not doing anything wrong,
because it's like sometimes
what are you
in
worried about?
those situations, they don't necessarily have that person in custody.
Right.
They have their DNA information on file, so when they run
nowadays,
the DNA evidence, it can ping somebody that's in the system, and if they're not in the system, it's not going to ping it. But,
well, that's how they caught the Green River Killer recently, was because he did one of those. Actually, I don't know if it was him. I think it was actually somebody in his family that did the genetic DNA testing, and they were able to tie back DNA from murders that happened in the 70s, and they found out, this guy's a serial killer, and so it's pretty amazing that we're able to do stuff like that now. That's a pretty big deal. But again,
well, who would be dumb enough to be a fucking serial killer and then submit your fucking DNA to have your fucking?
Well, I don't think he did it. I think a family member did it, and somehow they were able to trace it. And so, they were able to trace it back to him with the DNA tracing. So it's like, but was that really a bad thing? Is it really a bad thing that we got a serial killer off the streets now? I don't think so. And we got some, closure for families. I think that was probably so people freak out and they're like, I don't want my, I don't want the government getting my DNA. Well, it's like, again, if you're not doing anything wrong, then what's the problem? If you're not out there raping and killing people and leaving your DNA behind.
Well, there's the argument of, falsifying records so they could basically just put your DNA in as it is, but then like if they say want to frame you for something, they could just submit your DNA that way. But that's why
would they want to do that? For
girl,
what reason?
who knows?
Right. I mean,
these
why?
people are crazy.
Like these people are nobody, So it's like usually the people that are freaking out about it are nobody. Right. I'm out here fucking busting fucking government conspiracies and discovering fucking ultra terrestrials, and I'm like, please take my DNA. You can have it. I dare you. Come for me. This is my warning right now. Come for me, guys. If I end up dead, I did not kill myself. It was the government. But it's so bizarre. And then it's like, what? They're going to take your DNA and clone you? Well, who cares? Why would you care?
Right. You wouldn't even know.
You wouldn't even know. Why would you care? It's a weird thing. But I guess, different people are different.
Well, it's actually helped in, gosh, what are they called? It's basically this doctor was performing late-term abortions or, birthing babies and saying that they had died to the mother, and then selling them to families that necessarily couldn't have children or just wanted children.
That's fucked up.
And there's a whole bunch of them. There's a whole TV series about it. But they use DNA to try and help
the families,
them find their families, because some of the mothers didn't even know it happened. They were under the impression that their child was stillborn.
Wow, that's crazy. And then what? They just, how do these people find out that they weren't?
Well, they usually undergo adoption because,
So, do the adopted parents know that that's what's going on?
Most likely, but at the same time, this doctor, he's telling people that their kids are dead and they're not. So Lord knows what he's telling these other people.
Right.
But there was some people that knew what was going on and actually sought him out. So by word of mouth. And I think it got to a point where he needed to essentially make it more believable by going through the adoption process with these people, so that way he would less likely be, incriminated for it. Okay. He's not even alive anymore. They actually had a search warrant to break into his mausoleum, I think that's what it's called, to see if there was any files in there.
In his mausoleum? Mausoleums are where you're buried at.
Yeah, because he's dead, so it's above ground.
Why were his files in there?
They weren't.
Oh.
But the crazy thing is, it's when they first issued a warrant, they said that they didn't look in there. They said that they just opened it up, they went inside and seen that there was nothing there. Well, then they got another warrant where they actually opened up the tombs, because there's 3 separate slots.
Oh, okay.
And so they got, the family on board, and they opened it up because they knew that 2 of them weren't used. So they were thinking that the files were in the 2 that were empty, because other people had died, but nobody was put in there with them. Well, when they went in there, there was a paper from the original search warrant that was actually in the tombs. So they did look in the tombs. It's crazy. I'll have to find this series so we can watch it together.
That sounds wild. That's some deep investigation right there. Yeah, I wouldn't think to look in someone's mausoleum for files. I guess I wouldn't think that it would run that deep, but that's
I think it was proposed by a family member because of the fact that he was the only one in there, yet there was 3 spots for bodies.
And he didn't have anybody to put there. He's like, you guys can.
Because I'm pretty sure he was married and his wife wasn't even put in there with him.
That's very interesting. I wonder why. We'll just have to watch this.
Yeah.
We'll have to watch this together. That's very interesting. Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. Man, that's. Let me tell you, that's really fucked up. That's really fucked up.
But with the help of science and DNA,
we've been able to get this far. With
if
all
people
that.
were, so up in arms about it that they put that kind of stuff on a halt, then these people would go their entire lives not knowing anything,
not knowing exactly what's happened. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, DNA testing is that was a big deal. When we were able to do that, that was a big deal. And, you know, now that we have these tools to do it, and it is pretty cool to think about, to like go back to these like crimes and stuff, these old crimes, where they had the forethought to keep the DNA, even though we didn't have the science. They thought, we need to keep this just in case. And then guess what? That just in case is now starting to pay off. And so it is really, but you know, like you said, DNA, it's only useful if they already have that DNA in the database somewhere, or they have somebody to test against it. And that's like fingerprints too. If you know, if you break into somebody's car and you've already, you know, they already fingerprinted you sometime in jail, then they can tie back your fingerprints, you know.
Wouldn't it be crazy, though, if, like, there was a crime that happened and, like, your fingerprint just so happened to match this person's fingerprint?
Well, that can happen. Do it! Yes, that can happen. That can. Fingerprints are not, we're finding out that they're not as unique, which is why we don't really use it as often as we used to. We instead use DNA. Well, now that the DNA testing has gotten a little better, you can get DNA on a lot of things in a lot of different ways. It's kind of the same argument for, actually for people wearing masks, is that, you know, something that you really don't realize is that you're spewing out little tiny droplets of saliva every time you talk, every time you breathe, every time you do anything with your mouth, and it's open. And so if you're doing, I mean, if you're just, you know, doing that at a crime scene, then your little droplets of DNA can get onto something. And guess what? They got DNA, and they can test that again. You know, they can test it against you. And so, I don't think it's so much just DNA anymore. Like, I think nowadays it's just like, I mean, as sad and gross as it is, it'd be like remnants, usually remnants of, you know, people that were sexually abused before they died, and you know, stuff like that. But you know, they could get enough. But, you know, eventually we will get to that point. Oh, somebody breathed on this? Let me scrape that DNA off of there and test it, you know. So it's like, if we keep being able to advance with our science, because we bend the rules a little bit when it comes to ethics, then, you know, one day we'll be there. Now, I don't know, you know, what would be unethical about DNA testing, but, well, somebody could probably take your mask and DNA test it, and they'd probably get something back. You know, they'd probably get your DNA back from that. So, I mean...
Yeah, because, like, you use your hands to take it on, take it off, you use hands to put it on.
Well, you're breathing into it, right, it's getting...
Skin flakes, there's
like, I know, like,
moisture,
you wear a mask long enough, right, it starts getting kind of moist in there, you know, mine are, you know, made out of cotton, and I notice, I'm like, ooh, these are getting kind of gross.
Right, better wash them.
I gotta go, yeah, I gotta take care of this.
Yeah, you're supposed to wash your masks every 3 to 5 days, like if you wear it like on a regular basis.
Like 3 to 5 uses, like roughly. Yeah, I'm not sure what the rules are, but I have just left mine in the car because supposedly
the sun,
it'll die, right? But I don't know, and I'll still wash them sometimes because they just get gross if you don't. I mean, they're on your fucking mouth, you know. That sounds like it's gross. You know, at the very least, they'll get stinky. And I had one of my guy friends, I had to wear one of my masks one time. And usually I just wear the one at a time, and then I've got a bunch of backups. But he wore the one, and, you know, he's got facial hair. Girl, it was pretty rank. I was like, this is gross. It was pretty nasty, so I washed it. I won't say who, but you know who they are. I'll tell you after the show. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, so, yeah, I mean, in order for us to make scientific advances, we need to have a little bit of give to bend the rules, and, you know, I think that's okay. It just depends on what we're doing. If we're not directly affecting you in your life or your anything, then you really shouldn't have an opinion on it. You know what I mean? So there's no reason why we can't clone a woolly mammoth. That's my whole. This is the argument of the day. We need to clone a woolly mammoth. That's the lesson here. And
I mean,
it
I'm
needs
down.
to happen now because I want to pet it. And
right. It's funny you say that because I was just thinking, like, and can it please be in a petting zoo?
Right, please. Let's all go see it. I will pay any amount of money. I don't care what it takes. I will sell my child to pet a woolly mammoth.
Give her as an offering.
Right. You can have this.
You majestic beast. You deserve my child.
Yep. I think she'd fare well with woolly mammoth. I think they'd get along. But yeah, I think that, there's no reason for us to not do those things. The only thing that stops us from doing those things is some weird notion that we have in our heads of right and wrong without any type of explanation. So that's what I think about the ethics of science. What do you think?
I definitely think there should be, a different standard of ethics for scientists.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much we can learn from it. It's not
right. Like okay, let the scientists clone a woolly mammoth, but don't let me go and clone it because
right.
I'm not responsible. I will ride that bitch through the streets naked. Yep. It would change my entire life, but it would also probably not be a good idea.
Asher's warrior princess.
It'd be the shit. So I do think that scientists do need to have a different standard, and at the same time, we need to be more open than what we're being now. I think we've closed off a lot of things, but again, like I said earlier, when it comes to cadavers and stuff like that, I mean, we can make those now, and so it's well, that's cool. Okay, so then we don't have to ease up on those rules because we've already made that possible. But guess what? We were able to recreate them because of all of the bodies that we studied throughout the years that got us here. We didn't fucking discover surgeries and shit by just, by doing it on animals. We did it, we didn't know. First imagine being the first doctor that opened up the first human and was like, what's in there?
Right. Let me just take a peek here.
And I think there's even stories of certain organs and things that we believe existed because we would look at animals and assume that they had the same makeup as we did, and then come to find out they didn't. I'm sure once the dead died, once they had dead people, start cutting them up, and they did, but it was very much a learning curve. You don't just cut open a dead body and you go, oh, I know, how to fix this living person. I'm just gonna take out their appendix. It just burst. It needs to come out. That they didn't know those things, and so the best way for them to go about finding out those things was to just do it. Unfortunately, I mean, I guess I'm thankful that I live in the year 2020 as opposed to living in the year 1420 because that was probably a rough time for medical science. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's some things that we can let up on as far as the ethics goes, but then there's some things that I think we could pull back, or just keep in mind, we can't just go experimenting on people against their will, and stuff like that. So consent is a big thing in my life, and it should be in everybody's. That's just one of those things. So I don't know. That's pretty much all I have to say about Got anything else to add on here?
Not really.
Okay. All right then. Well, guys, I have a lot of work to do. I'll make sure I keep you guys updated on my Mothman adventures, and hopefully I find them. But we'll still be back next week, and it'll be another Wednesday. So we'll see you then.
Bye.